Well, so far, diplomacy has yielded little success in ending the crisis. Ambassador Earl Anthony Wayne is a former US Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Europe. For 40 years, he's worked as a US diplomat, and he joins us now from Washington with insight into the diplomatic scramble to end this conflict. Ambassador Wayne, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. So far, it could be said that diplomatic efforts to bring an end to Russia's invasion of Ukraine have come to nothing. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think diplomacy has been very important in countering the aggressive actions of a leader of Russia who wants to absorb another country. It has not yet succeeded in stopping him from doing that, but it has rallied much of the world together in criticism of his invasion of Ukraine, and it has rallied together much of the rest of Europe and the United States and North America and key partners and allies in Asia to try to find ways to increase pressure on Russia to stop and reverse this invasion.
And you mentioned your country, the United States, there. Do you believe that the US is doing all it could diplomatically to end this conflict in Ukraine?
I think they've been very intense and actually quite successful and adept in the diplomacy that they have used in working to build consensus with partners and allies in this effort. As you know, historically, sometimes the United States has been criticized for acting unilaterally. In this situation, there's been an intense effort to build a consensus, both within NATO and then with non-NATO members in Europe, on ways to proceed. And that includes on the application of economic sanctions. It includes the provision of humanitarian assistance, and it includes working through and discussing what kind of military assistance can be and should be given to Ukraine as they resist this invasion. So yes, I think it's been a very impressive effort. But as you say, it has not yet persuaded Russia and particularly Vladimir Putin from stopping this invasion, which is an invasion without any pretext except the desire to take over part or all of Ukraine.
Well, in that context, what will the US ultimately do, or what do you think the US should ultimately do, or certainly ultimately urge its allies to do, to end this war?
Well, I think right now we're in a situation where there's no clear off-ramp for either Russia or those trying to help defend Ukraine as an independent nation. So I think right now we are in a situation where both sides will probably try to increase pressure. We've seen overnight Russia increasing its bombardment of cities in Ukraine. We've seen Putin talk about inviting in foreign volunteers, translated mercenaries from elsewhere to come in and fight, and also talking about confiscating the property of any Western business that has decided to close down in Russia during this period of time. So on the side of Europe and the United States and other democracies, I think also there's going to be a continued looking at ways to increase that pressure. There are a lot of things that can still be done on the sanction side. There are more oligarchs, there are more Russian companies. Today, the United States is going to take away the normal trade status, most favored nation status that Russia has in the trade areas. There's more oil and gas and diamonds and minerals that can be sanctioned Russian exports. So there's a lot more that can still be done, even on this economic side. And simultaneously, there's a discussion going on, both in public and private, about what additional military support should be provided to Ukraine. As you know, there's been a very public debate about whether the United States and its allies should help support getting additional aircraft to Ukraine, including former Russian aircraft, MiG aircraft that the Ukrainians know how to fly. There's been a discussion about a no-fly zone over Ukraine. And military and intelligence officials have argued this would really be very dangerous to turning this into a larger conflict between NATO and Russia. But there are other things that can be supplied. And so I think there's a careful look going on at supplying more unmanned vehicles, looking if there's some short-range air defense systems.
Okay, very interesting indeed. Ambassador Earl Anthony Wayne, I want to thank you very much indeed for talking to us, and he joined us there from Washington.